Hello everyone, my name is Philip and I'm not dead. This channel's not dead. Welcome to the first episode of Phasing Forward. Essentially this series is going to be a weekly series, or we're going to at least try to make it weekly, where we will be talking about all of Marvel's Phase 4 lineup. We're going to be taking all the episodes of the Disney Plus shows that are lined up for Phase 4, as well as the movies when they come out. Joining me today is who will hopefully be my co-host for the vast majority of these episodes. It is one Zenith Warrior Princess, otherwise known as Zen. How are you doing today, Zen?
Hey everybody, I'm doing good, but also, wait a minute, you're not dead? I thought you were dead.
You would assume that I was dead because my channel's been fucking stagnant since May of last year, since I uploaded the WWE bubble. But no, I really got a knack for making update videos. I should just make that the entire channel, just update videos the channel.
Oh god,
it's gotten to the point where
it's gotten to the point where I'm
actually
making doing something.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where I'm actually making like update videos on your channel now.
But I mean, I'm sorry for stealing Phil away, but he's been making my videos, and he does a very, very good job, so I kind of need him. In fact, you can't have him. He's mine.
Yeah, I'm sorry guys, Zen took me away. I'm her bitch now, so it's that's my channel now as well as hers. This channel's this isn't my channel, this is our channel. Communism at its finest. But yeah, so this is going to be a series, just, again, generally being around Phase 4. We were going to do a video, Zen doesn't know about this, but we were going to do a video before this first WandaVision one, where it was us essentially looking at the entirety of the Phase 4 lineup, and just, like, generally saying how excited we were for each thing. But unfortunately, by the time I had actually decided to, like, go through with Phasing Forward, it was a little too close to WandaVision's actual release, so I decided not to do that. So, yeah, that's just a plan. You know, we'll talk about our expectations for each individual show when we go into the shows themselves, as well as the movies. The movies will be easier. Lengthier, because they're movies, not just singular episodes of TV shows. But yeah, so Phase 4's gonna go for a good while, till at least 2023. If I just bring up the Phase 4 lineup here, God, we have... Oh, there's a lot of Phase 4 stuff coming up. So, of course, we're starting with WandaVision right now. That is the big show that, not the wrestler, never the wrestler. I kid, of course, Big Show's a fine wrestler, but you know. So, of course, we're starting with WandaVision, and then following right after WandaVision, like 2 weeks after the series ends, we've got Falcon and the Winter Soldier, then Loki, and then What If, at least season 1 of What If, and then Miss Marvel, then Hawkeye, then Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Secret Invasion, Ironheart, and Armor Wars. And then we also have the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. That's all the Disney Plus stuff. And then on the movie side of things, we have Black Widow, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Seven Rings, Eternals, the third Spider-Man movie, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Thor: Love and Thunder, Black Panther 2, unfortunately without Chadwick Boseman, May's soul. What am I saying? May he rest in peace. Then Captain Marvel 2, then Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and the reboot of the Fantastic Four. And maybe Blade.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Maybe Blade as well, but that hasn't been confirmed for, like, Phase 4 specifically, so that may be Phase 5, but we don't know yet.
I'm pretty sure Blade is separate because Blade is like its own thing.
Well, no, it's a part of the
it's
a part of the MCU. No, it's a part of the MCU. It's just that we don't know which phase it's gonna be yet. We know that Mahershala Ali is playing Blade, and we know it is a part of the MCU. We just don't know which phase it's gonna be. It'll probably be in Phase 5 since we haven't heard it for Phase 4 yet. Along with the third Deadpool movie, which Kevin Feige did confirm, the third Deadpool movie will be set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it will still be rated R, which I'm surprised by, but yeah.
So does that mean we have to cover Deadpool 1 and 2 now?
I already had them on the schedule. But yeah, it's. So, what I think that not to get too much into it, but what I think they're going to do with Deadpool 3 is they're just going to plop Deadpool into the MCU and like make snide jokes that like, oh, what happened to my supporting cast? I guess the studio couldn't use them because they're in a different franchise.
There's a lot of interesting ways this could go.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too because you also have the Fantastic Universe with the Fantastic Four, and I don't know how they're gonna do some of these things, but now we kind of have to cover them because they're technically part of the MCU. The MCU is a weird web. Here's a question: does the Ang Lee Hulk movie count? Because while it technically is not an MCU movie, it actually does have the origin of the Hulk. And it's set up for the Incredible Hulk?
Well, I don't. Well, no, I don't, because, like, at the start of the Incredible Hulk, we do get the backstory. It's just in a quick montage. And the way they handle the backstory is different to how they handle it in Ang Lee's Hulk. So, I wouldn't consider it, like, connected.
Okay. I still want to talk about it at some point, though.
I'll be honest, it's a more interesting talk than than the Incredible Hulk is. Whether it's better or worse, it's at least more interesting, and in a way that kind of makes me prefer it, but that's a discussion for another day.
In any case, we're here to talk about WandaVision, and, this is something that I really was interested in. When I saw the second trailer, the teaser, I didn't really know how to really think about it, but once we got like the actual trailer of it, it was very intriguing. It was very glitchy. It had a very different tone, very different feel, and now that we've got it, I am impressed. I am very impressed. What do you think?
Well, this from the get-go, this was like one of the ones I was the most interested in, because like this, just from like when it was announced at San Diego Comic-Con in 2019, and we got like not just the cast reveal, and it was like a what the fuck cast, because we're getting like Jimmy Woo from Ant-Man and the Wasp, Monica Rambeau from Captain Marvel now as an adult, Darcy from the Thor movies. It's like that's such a weird mishmash of a cast, but then we got like concept art, and it was very clear that this was being like this had like so many inspirations from the comics, particularly from Tom King's Vision run, which we definitely have to cover for Zen Comics, because that is such a very, very good run, as well as a bit of House of M stuff here, which we will get more into later on. But yeah, it was just so many good comic storylines, like inspiration being taken from them for this series, and because Wanda is legit like one of my favorite characters in the movies. I love Wanda since Age of Ultron. I have loved her character. I've just been really damn excited for this series, and it's lived up to the hype. Like, when the trailers came out, I was like, this is gonna be good. And surprise, this was fucking awesome.
I honestly did not know what to expect going in, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised. There's some really interesting story potential with the backdrop of sitcoms and sitcoms in general that, I had grown up with for a very long time. My parents had shown me, stuff like Leave It to Beaver. They used to watch, like, I Love Lucy and the Munsters and stuff like that. And, of course, as a kid, we also grew up watching, not the Partridge Family, but the Brady Bunch and stuff like that. So a lot of this is very, very tongue-in-cheek, and you wouldn't think it would work for a superhero type show, but they make it work, and the sinister air behind every little thing that they do is very, very interesting. And there are just some moments where I had to just step back and say, okay, what the fuck? And it's interesting, it's intriguing. It does have those House of M vibes. And while I haven't read House of M, I have seen Linkar's summary and review of House of M, and it very much does have those vibes to it. Mm-hmm. But also when it peels back outside of the town, and there's some really interesting ideas present, like the sword logo, the commercials in the middle of the episodes with the Hydra symbol. They're very interesting stuff buried behind the sitcom as the backdrop, and the fact that each different episode is a different era of style of sitcom, and you see that Wanda slowly bringing color into the world or making it widescreen. So really interesting ideas, and I think it's really cleverly done.
Mm-hmm. I've got a lot of things to talk about. We'll take it episode by episode, but I've got a lot of things that, like, I've been like, when we were gonna, because so peeling it back a bit, we were gonna start this series last week with just the first 2 episodes, because that's what premiered first. We had to delay this by a week just to give us a little more time, just to give Zen a little more time, primarily. And so I have been, I did get the head start with this, essentially. From this point onwards, Zen's gonna, follow me week to week, watching the show. But, like, Zen, had a little bit of a later start to the show. So we're doing the first 3 episodes as opposed to the first 2 episodes, which I still think is fitting, because the first 3 episodes is what the critics got before the show came out. Essentially my notes doubled with episode 3 just because of how much we have to talk about. This is a show that's gonna, I feel like, because initially the way we were gonna start phase 4 was with Black Widow, and the way we were gonna start the Disney Plus shows was with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm excited for both Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Black Widow, but I feel like this is a much better starting point for Phase 4, because, it's a much better starting point for Phase 4, with the exception of the fact that the follow-up to this movie, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, now isn't coming for another year, because initially this was supposed to, air around the same time it is now. But then Doctor Strange 2 was supposed to come out in May of this year. So it would be like a follow-up, very close to this series' release. Whereas now we have to wait a year for it. But aside from that fact, this is a perfect starting point for Phase 4. Because it's so different and so unique from everything else MCU related. I feel like it's the best, opening for what's sure to be, at least judging from the lineup we have, what's looking to be a much different phase compared to what we've gotten before. Because now that the big Infinity Gauntlet story has now ended, we can now just we don't have to stick to one primary singular story that we're building up across the MCU. Now we can focus on individual ongoing stories. We have this whole thing with the multiverse that is going to start with Spider-Man 3 and Doctor Strange 2. We have this whole other thing with Sword that's starting with this series and is going to go on to Captain Marvel 2 and Secret Invasion. We have all these individual stories going on with each other going forward, and because we don't have any singular goal that we're going for, we can be much more creative with all the individual series. And the Disney Plus shows, I think, is are really indicative of that. We have this creepy sitcom like show with WandaVision. We have a more like grounded Winter Soldier-esque series with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We have like a time thing, like a time jumping show with Loki. We have an anthology series with What If. Miss Marvel's gonna be a teenage drama, you know, with like a teenager going through everyday life. Hawkeye is gonna be a mentor series, etc., etc., etc. So many different things like to go off of, and with starting with WandaVision, which is like one of the more out there concepts of Phase 4, I think is a really, really good idea. And it's also a series again that leans very heavily into like theorizing. You know, it's great because now every week people are just going to be like theorizing what's going on, and we definitely have like a bunch of theories to talk about in this video.
It is very interesting for me because the previous things have the previous phases have all had this air of we know what we're doing. We're all building up to Thanos. Aside from Phase 1, which was mainly, let's just get everybody out there. Let's just prove this can't be done.
Yeah, Phase 1 was very... Yeah, Phase 1's very much like, you know, let's build up to the Avengers. Let's, like, do these 5 movies in the lead up to the Avengers. And then from the Avengers onward, it was, let's lead up to Thanos.
Mm-hmm. Phase 1 was very experimental. It was, let's see what works and stick with it. And, you know, I have issues with a couple of Phase 1 films. I don't like all of Thor, and I don't like all of Incredible Hulk. But a lot of it works as a whole for a phase, which is interesting for an experiment, whereas Phase 2 and Phase 3 were, alright, let's get more players in here, let's build up to Thanos, let's try to get this on the board, and tell individual stories while we're doing it. Whereas here, with Phase 4 as a starting point, I don't know where this is going. I see some little things, like we see AIM scientist hints, we see stuff of Hydra, we see stuff from other aspects of the universe like Sword and Shield, but I can't tell where this is going perfectly yet, and that's something new. That's something that I like, is we have hints of individual storylines, but it's very much about Wanda and Vision, and I think that's what we need right now. No more building towards something huge, and we can build towards something big later on. You know, maybe have I don't know, MODOK or another one. Galactus could probably be brought up later on.
Yes, like the next natural step from Thanos. MODOK.
MODOK, I think, is big enough, but not too big that we need everyone. That's what I'm saying is threats that
could work for an Avengers movie, yeah.
Threats that are big, but not like, you know, world changing. I think Galactus could be the next big threat when they get into the Fantastic Four, but you know, we need to have smaller threats again, and I think this is good.
Yeah, it's like when we finally get into a new Avengers movie, which at this point I think Young Avengers is going to be like a safe bet. I feel like when we get back into the Avengers, we're going to have Young Avengers, because like they're going to make Cassie Lang stature from the comics. We already have Kate Bishop as Hawkeye coming. We have Ironheart coming, Miss Marvel, Peter Parker, Tom Holland Spider-Man's already young in this series. Unless they want to bring in Miles Morales, which they totally should. You know, you have all these younger heroes coming around. I think Young Avengers is a safe bet. And I think for a first installment in that, like a smaller villain, but that's still a big enough threat, like MODOK would work very well.
Mm-hmm. And again, we still don't know who really is the villain, even at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something to discuss when we hit to episode 3. So let's discuss a little bit about episode 1, because this one is probably the least amount of we know what's going on. Episode 1 is very much, let's set a stage.
Yeah,
quite literally.
Yeah, episode 1's episode 1 is okay. First of all, before we even head into episode 1, I love the new Marvel Studios logo, and I'm not just talking about the WandaVision specific one that like turns into black and white for for episode 1. Although that one is pretty neat, like, you know, because they don't do as many variants nowadays, and I feel like that one would be like the fact that like they did the black and white one, that was really nice. But very quickly they also did a new Marvel Studios logo where it's the same one. It's the same one as like that they have been doing, which I'm glad about because I love the current Marvel Studios opening. Only they changed up the images when it's like flashing through all the scenes, and you know, nothing too much to bring up there. It's just nice to like see a little bit of a change to the opening, and also I love how when the final clip you see in the logo before it like fades the clips out is Black Panther like coming down and like, you know, shooting out like the absorbing power his suit has, and that goes across the entire logo. I love that, just like honoring Black Panther like that.
And that's a good thing. I really am glad that they're honoring the legacy of Black Panther, because Black Panther was a big movie. I love Black Panther, and it is a death that was really felt across the entire cast, and you know, that's something I'm glad that they honored. But
yeah,
episode 1 of WandaVision.
Yeah, episode 1 of WandaVision is it's very like, and this is one point I'm gonna like really like stress across the entirety of this the entirety of these 3 episodes. These episodes aren't a parody of sitcoms, and that's something I love. They're playing these sitcom these sitcom styles like very straight. Like, it's not a parody. Like, they're not doing anything that's like a critique of like of these older sitcoms. They're quite literally just taking scenarios that would be in these older sitcoms, depending on whichever decade they're doing, like in any of the individual episodes, and they're just doing these sitcoms entirely straight. And I'm gonna get into why they really do this later on, but it's something that I really, really love, and it's like, in a way, it also like it's also really endearing because, you know, and not to say like this about all parodies, because like a lot of parodies, you know, a lot of parodies still have, you know, love for the original thing that they're satirizing, but some of them, on the occasion, they can feel like very cynical. They run the risk of being a little too cynical as well. Whereas because this show is playing these sitcom scenarios very straight, it also has this just general vibe, this general endearing vibe to it, you know, when it's not being creepy. But when it's just doing the sitcom scenarios at face value, it has this very endearing vibe to it. So, yeah, that's one aspect I really love, and it's apparent as soon as the first episode.
At the same time, while I do agree that it is not a full parody, there are little things that I did catch up on, especially in the first episode, where Vision wonders what the company actually does that he's working at. And I'm like, yeah, in a lot of early sitcoms at that era, you never know what the characters do for a living. I mean, yeah, I Love Lucy, they do actually showcase this, but in other shows, what do these characters do for a living? You never learn it.
Yeah, although I also think that just like I also think that just generally ties into the fact that like Wanda and Vision just don't know anything about their life. Like, oh, when did you marry? You know, like why'd you come here? Like their entire story. So I think that part is also just like tying into the fact that Wanda and Vision just don't know what the hell they're doing. Like what their life here is like. You know.
Exactly, but it works on 2 levels, I think. And there's some really little nods, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the boss's wife was the mother on that 70s show.
I haven't seen that 70s show, so I can't confirm that.
because I recognize the actress, and I'm just like, I believe she is, but she's also playing the role of like. They're doing kind of an I Love Lucy thing where one of the neighbors has a husband named Fred who you never see, but also like she feels like Ethel in her role. It's weird.
I think Agnes's husband was like Frank, but that's beside the point. I'm just trying to.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the other.
I know. I'm that guy who will like cool zoom focus on like the minor most little things.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, while they're trying to take these tropes and reinvent them, whereas you have this one neighbor who's always like, hey, I'm happy and whatnot, but her husband's Fred, whereas you have this boss who's, I believe, Frank or whatever, but the wife is more like Ethel from I Love Lucy, and they have these little archetypes, but they're not fully there. It's interesting.
Also, while you've been talking, I've just been looking it up. That 70s show, is her name like Kitty Foreman?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yep. So she was.
I knew it. For the moment she stepped on screen, I'm like, wait a second. And that works so well, especially once we get to... Actually, she didn't appear in the 70s parody episode.
She didn't even appear in the 70s parody. Most of the characters didn't actually appear in the 70s parody because we were focused on like the whole pregnancy plot. But yeah, it's I speaking as someone who grew up with sitcoms from like multiple different decades. I didn't grow up with anything 50s or anything really like. I have to think about 80s. I'll have to come back when we come back next week for episode 4. Because next week's gonna be the 80s episode. I'm gonna have to think about 80s shows 80s sitcoms that I've actually seen. But like I grew up on Bewitched. I grew up on I Dream of Jeannie. Friends is 90s, but I grew up on Friends. I definitely have my sitcom experience, you could say, and like especially when we get into episode 2, which we'll talk about in a bit. I felt like right at home, and there's like little things they do. There's little things that they do that's so good. For example, I did not realize this. Someone pointed this out on Twitter, and I love this. At the start of episode 2, again, we'll talk about episode 2 later on, but like at the start of episode 2, you see Wanda and Vision sleeping in 2 separate beds, and then Wanda brings the beds together, and that's not only because like, oh, you know, Wanda's getting scared and she's bringing them together. Apparently, in like television shows, either in television shows in the 50s or just in the 50s in general, husband and wife like slept in like 2 separate beds. I'm not sure if that's just a thing in the 50s. I'd assume not, but like,
oh, you didn't know this?
I did not know this. I legitimately did not know about this. And
yeah, let me explain a little bit better. Essentially, in the 50s and I think the early 60s, it was very taboo for married couple to be seen having, one bed because that was scandalous. My grandparents have 2 beds in their attic, and at the time, nobody, not on TV or in real life, had more than one. Like they didn't have one singular bed.
And that was, I found, like when I found that out, I was like, wow, really? So, and but then that like put a whole different context behind the beginning of episode 2, because I was like, oh, transitioning from the 50s to the 60s, they bring the beds together. That's such a cool like minor little detail. That's so cool. They also like, one thing I also found out that was like mind-blowing to me, like they used actual cameras that were used in the 50s and 60s, like for like the individual decades. They used actual cameras from those decades, which is amazing.
It really is, and like that's the thing that I really enjoyed about that first episode is, it very much feels like a sitcom of the era. You have all these minor players, but it focuses on 2 central people on a wacky scenario, and it gets resolved easily at the end. And, there's this sinister air about, like, the choking scene, but a lot of it is focused on getting this sitcom feel. You have this opening that's very, very simple, very much to the decade, and I think that's what it needed to be. I'm not too big a fan of the sitcoms these days. I still love, like, the Munsters, but, like, stuff like I Love Lucy, I feel gets more cultural impact than anything else, and once you know what happened in the episode, you've seen the episode, it's one of those things where I think nostalgia is a big factor in those types of things. So I like this first episode, but this type of sitcom is not my favorite. It Mine still neither. Was really entertaining.
Yeah, it's I actually studied I Am Lucy in year 12 media. Essentially, we had to like do an entire thing on like different decades of television, and we did like it was essentially about women representation in television, and we go from the 50s like with I Love Lucy and the famous the Cherry Factory like episode where it's like
the Chocolate Factory.
The Chocolate Factory. Not to. I'm thinking of Friendship is Magic is the thing, because they have a parody of that in season 2. No, the Chocolate Factory. Yeah, and it was like it was that episode, and like the studio audience laughed at like the grandpa wearing the apron, because that's a woman's thing. Haha. It's And then we go into Bewitched and I Dream a Genie, and then Murphy Brown, which is like, a main female character in a sitcom, and she has like a journalist role. It's something I studied in year 12. It was fun. It was really fun, and I do agree that the I Love Lucy 50s style of sitcom isn't necessarily my kind of sitcom. I can't wait for the fucking 90s for the 90s episode, but it's it's what were you gonna say?
I find it interesting how the decades have changed, because while I don't find them as entertaining anymore, like I still see the appeal, and there are some things though that just haven't aged. And they keep saying, oh, well, you're married, where are your rings, when are you gonna have kids, all rushing into that sort of thing. And that was just the era, that was just the time period.
Yep.
And you were supposed to put on like this fancy dinner for your husband, not for your husband, for your boss, and like this was the time period. And a lot of these things have kind of aged out, and that's something that we'll get into episode 2. But it's just seeing how these things have changed and how people change with the decade is interesting for me. While I may not find these as entertaining as I used to, because a lot of it is just the one joke for the episode for each pair, it's still fun to watch.
Yeah, in general, I think this show does the sitcom elements like just really well, and I think above everything else, the reason why I think it works so well among just everything else is it's legitimately funny. Like just from the first episode alone, and I think a lot of it just comes down to the cast. Like Paul Bettany really gets the shine, and like because he's not in the vision prosthetics the entire time, he's able to have a lot more facial expressions here, and it's just so fucking funny. Like, and that's the thing. If you're gonna play the sitcom aspect straight, then that's great and that's endearing, and there's a story reason behind it. But also you gotta do it legitimately good, and you gotta be legitimately funny. And I feel like this show has really nailed that down. Like, there's a lot of jokes here which I was just laughing my ass off at. It was great. I think
it really does a good job with Vision in particular, and how he's pretending not to be a machine, but really good at his job. It's like, oh man, you are a machine out there. It's like, no, I was not.
Yeah, it's great. I love it because it feels like a genuinely 60s sitcom kind of thing, because it's but with Bewitched, for example, it's we'll have a show with Bewitched where it's the husband's wife is a witch, or with I Dream a Genie, it's the husband has a genie that he found. It feels like a sitcom from that era where it's it's the wife is a witch, the husband is a robot, but how are they gonna live their life keeping it a secret?
But they do some really funny things. And I will say this right now, Drunk Vision, or also known as Vision with gum in his gears, is the best thing ever. Legitimately, Drunk Vision is I had to keep pausing. It's no, stop that rabbit. I have to pull a hat out of it. It is so funny. I had to stop and laugh. And that hasn't happened to me in a lot of modern sitcoms, but like legit, it worked.
Yeah, it's just to finish up on episode 1 quickly, because again, there's not too much to talk about. But just to end off on episode 1 very quickly, I love how the entire episode, almost the entire episode, with the exception of the commercial, which we'll get to the commercials very soon. But I love how the entire episode, almost all of the episode, is essentially just no drop in the facade, nothing that like makes us think like, oh, you know, what else is going on here, until the dinner scene where it's like. But the thing is, there's like little things throughout the episode where it's like, oh, you know, there's little things throughout the episode where it's just like, oh, what you know, what's going, like, you know, why can't they remember, like, you know, why can't they remember getting married, and why can't they remember, like, you know, what their anniversary is, and yada yada. Now, of course, we as the audience know why. It's because we never saw them get married, and Vision kind of fucking died. Oh yeah, spoilers for everything else MCU related. But it's, yeah, so it's we know like all this detail, but it's like the characters are like, why can't we come up with any of these details? And then the dinner scene comes, and that just comes to a head, and that's when the choking scene happens, and that's when we're like, okay, what the hell's going on? Why is Arthur suddenly choking? And then they get up, and it's like, oh, everything's fine now.
It's very weird, but and creepy, but like, you know, it just peels back this veneer, and it's great. But it's not quite as good to me as what they do with episode 2, where episode 2, again, is a 60s style comedy for Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. They even have like a Bewitched style opening, which is really, really cool. But they do this like animated opening.
Yeah, the openings are great. I love how there's a different opening for every single episode. I love how for every single episode they have like a different opening that like reflects the era, and I especially like when the animated opening for episode 2 came on, I was just like, oh my god, this is just Bewitched. I love it. I love how this is, you know, an animated opening that like it looks like almost exactly like freaking the Bewitched animated opening, and I love it. Loved it, and I can't wait to see what they do for like for the 80s and 90s, especially 90s and stuff, you know. It should be great.
And like from the very beginning of episode 2, you start seeing very big hints. Like you see this helicopter. Everything else is in black and white. The helicopter is in color and has a symbol on it. And then you get the radio scene, and you get like stuff that's later, and it's like all these little things that make you tilt your head. But then a large portion of the episode is just a Bewitched style comedy where they're trying to hide Vision and real magic while doing real magic. It's really cool.
Yeah, and just one more note on episode 1, because I think at this point we're fully into episode 2. One more note on episode 1. It ends with the screen just going wide, and we see a hand, you know, like turning the channel off. I think that who that's supposed to be is Darcy, because first of all, it's clearly a woman's hand. I feel like that at first I thought that was like a mastermind. It's like, oh, that's the person pulling the strings, but no, it what's more likely is that that's the Sword headquarters, and Darcy is like, you know, looking over the things like from there. So yeah, we'll have to see, but that's why I think. So yeah, but episode 2, going into episode 2 now, because we've just fully gone into episode 2. I was prepared to say that this was my favorite episode, but then episode 3 happened, and there was a lot of stuff in the second half just to talk about. Oh, episode 2 was so good. I loved it. I felt right at home with this episode. I loved, like you mentioned, Drunk Vision. I love so many funny jokes in this. Like the communist joke made me like, I wasn't expecting it, so I was like laughing out loud. Like I was just so loudly. I just because it caught me off guard, I was like, where the fuck did that come from? And it, like the magic show itself was like legitimately funny. It was like, that's the big thing about this show. If it wasn't legitimately funny, these episodes would be a bore. this show would be a bore until it got to the story sections, but because it's so funny, I just want to keep watching the sitcom part.
And at the same time, it still shows that these sitcoms can still work. Like the 60s style sitcom is still funny if you have the right writing.
Yeah, it's I loved this episode. I think they've really done a fantastic job with. I think they've really done a fantastic job with the writing. I think they've, it's again the acting is also really played into it. I love not just the main characters, but I love the supporting cast as well. I love Agnes is so great. Every time Agnes is on screen, I just love it. She's such a fun character. And you know, she just every time she freaking like, just from her introduction, like the first joke she says, she's like, "Hi, I'm Agnes. You know, I would have come to meet you sooner, but my mother was in town, so I wasn't." I love like just every line like that comes out of her mouth. She's so good.
And her constant dunking on her husband is I love it. That you never see. You never see her husband.
Never see her husband, yeah. How can anybody be doing this sober? She's such a mood. Yeah,
like,
and
there are a lot of really good things about the cast, the setup, like the Norm saying, "That was my grandmother's piano." Like, there are really good
that wasn't
aspects.
Norm was the guy from episode 1 who was like, "You're like a walking computer." That was Norm.
Right. The who's the other guy? I don't think they've named him.
I think his name's. I think his name is I actually can't remember his name. They did name him in episode 3 and 1, but I just can't remember that name. It's the one who's married to Dottie. So yeah. I can't remember his name though, but he was funny because especially the episode 3 moment where he breaks the fourth wall and it's just like, these earrings make me look fat. Blackout. Oh, thank God.
Like there's some really good casts here, but for me, what really brings it out are the jokes and the moments where it just pulls back the veneer, like the blood, the blood being like actually colored and the radio portion, like saying like, "Who's doing this to you, Wanda?" Like, interesting stuff.
So it's like, I don't know which way it's being pulled now, because like, especially after episode 3, because like it's very obvious, even just from episode 2, like not just like taking episode 3 out of the picture, even just from episode 2, it's very obvious that Wanda knows what's going on. Like, not like, okay, the only thing she's confused about is like the sword stuff, because like, you know, the helicopter and like all that stuff. She was initially confused about that. It seems like she's kind of like put a little bit of that together, but other than that, you know, this being an alternate world, it's like very obvious that she knows what's going on. And I feel like, you know, and what I love about that is just like, you know, how like it's like I don't know what's a red herring. That's the thing. I don't know what's a red herring, because, you know, because like all this stuff about like, you know, Wanda like rewinding time and like, you know, all that stuff, that could be a red herring into like, oh, we're making you think that Wanda's the villain of the show, but actually it's someone else. Or all these other things about like, you know, like for example, at the end of episode 1, where we see like a pullback and we see someone watching the sitcom, you could very well think that that's the person who's the mastermind of it all. But now, a few episodes later, I'm thinking maybe not. And the person on the radio saying like, "Oh, who's doing this to you, Wanda?" It's call me crazy, but his voice sounded like Jimmy Woo. It's, you know, like looking at it all, like, looking at all that, that could be a red herring for like, oh, someone else is in charge of all this, but it could be Wanda. At this point, I don't know. I'm leaning more towards this being like all Wanda's doing, but I'm also thinking that it could be like Wanda did this of her own volition, and there's someone else like manipulating it, like, you know, who's stringing Wanda along. But, you know,
there's also these two moments where like at the end of episode 2, where Wanda sees the guy coming out of the sewer who looks like an AIM scientist with all the bees swarming around, and she says no, and then it rewinds. And they kind of do something similar in episode 3, where Vision figures out what's going on in a couple points, and it just cuts.
I love that point in episode 3 where he's I love the point in episode 3 where, because that made me like that kind of like made me like jump a little bit because it was like, I think something's wrong here, Wanda. Cuts to Wanda and she blinks a bit, and then it just like nonchalantly just like cuts back, like it's a little bit of a stuttery cut, and I love that because it's like, I saw some people on Twitter saying like, did Disney Plus just crap out on me? Like what happened? I love it. It's great.
It's really well handled because you don't know, like, is someone pulling the strings on Wanda? Is she being brainwashed? We don't know, and it's very good that we can speculate with what's going on, and it works with the style and the feel that they're going for. And because at the end of episode 3, not to jump the gun, but at the end of episode 3, she kicks one of the characters out of the reality, and we'll see kind of what's going on, but there's a veneer of she's the one who knows what's going on, and she doesn't want people to know, because there's also the people in the reality trying to tell Vision but being afraid to, and it's like, I don't know. I've pieced together more and more what's going on, but there's still a lot that I'm like confused about and that I just don't know where it's gonna go. And especially like episode 2, I love the end where it just turns the color. I love how by the end like, it was, we've gotten hints up to that point. Like for example, when like Arthur's choking and it's Wanda just goes to Vision, help him, and it's. But it's really at the end of episode 2 where Wanda actively rewinds time, where it's like, okay, she knows what's going on. Absolutely, she knows what's going on. And it's. Do you have anything else you want to say about episode 2 before we move on from it? Not at the moment. Like I love the way it ends. I love the adding of color, and the sudden pregnancy was a big what the fuck, but that leads into the next episode.
Yeah, and it's like episode 2, like I was ready to just call my favorite episode up till now, especially like with the first half of episode 3. I was like, oh yeah, I'm really enjoying this, but it's like, do a little bit more for like me to like prefer this episode to episode 2, and just episode 3 just completely, it's an absolute banger. And before we like head on to like the specifics of episode 3, I want to quickly bring up the commercials, because the commercial in episode 3 doesn't add too much more than episode 2. But what I love about the commercials, and I noticed this in episode 2, like because I paused it and I thought about it, because like episode 1 happens and we get the Toastmate commercial, and I'm like, that's funny. Wait, Stark Industries, what the hell? And I took mental note of that because I was like, that could be important. I don't know. We get to episode 2. And then the Strucker watch commercial, and the name Strucker didn't hit me immediately, but then you see the Hydra logo, and I was like, wait, Hydra, what the hell? Paused it, Strucker. Okay, Struckers with Hydra, of course, but then I was like, what the hell do these mean? Are they just doing random things for like for these commercials? And then I thought back to the first one, I was trying to put 2 and 2 together, like what the hell are these commercials trying to say? And it hit me, these are Wanda's memories. It's like episode 1, and you didn't realize that until I told you at the end of episode 3. Episode 1's was like, the Toastmate 2000. It's like, Toastmate. The two mates have been toast because Wanda's parents died. And it's, they put the toast in, like it's ticking and ticking and ticking. That's the first like what the fuck moment of like the entire series, where it's like, what the hell's going on here? And it's like, it's all uncomfortable, and the man and the woman are just looking like, what the, like, just really awkwardly. And what I love is like when they put the toast in, you hear the Iron Man repulsor, which I thought was a really nice touch. So episode 1's commercial is like, Wanda's parents having died by a bomb from Stark Industries. Episode 2 is, representing Strucker taking the twins in. And episode 3's commercial is, Hydra soak, which, essentially the twins have been soaked in the Hydra water, I guess, to like get their powers. So,
but also
Agents of Shield, I know, yeah, Agents of Shield.
Agents
callback.
of Shield, the soap brainwashes you. So yeah.
Yeah, that was a nice little Easter egg for Agents of Shield fans. I didn't pick up on that because I don't watch Agents of Shield. But yeah,
I stopped watching at season 2, so I didn't get it myself. But I did watch Agent Carter. So what I was thinking with the Strucker watch until they showed the Hydra symbol was I was initially thinking of the guy from Agent Carter who could hypnotize people with watches, but then Strucker came on, and then I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I love the use of the commercials so far. It's such a good way to like get into Wanda's psyche, and it's like I love how like it's so easy to miss because like you didn't pick up on it till like the end of episode 3, where it's like, and I love how it's like how like subtle it is, because it's like, and once you pick it up, you start more actively paying attention to it and noticing it. But I just love how like subtly they do it.
The thing that I really like about it is there's a lot of background stuff to it that is really subtle, doesn't always get your notice, but it's there, especially on repeated viewings. And episode 3 had a lot of those. Just from start to finish, I'm just like, okay, well, it's kind of odd that the roommate, not the roommate, what's her name? Geraldine sees what's going on around her, doesn't freak out, doesn't notice, and doesn't care. She's more focused on Pietro and that sort of thing. And that's like a little hint there. But also the people, like, there's something off. Like, they're cutting into the wall and they don't care. And it's almost like something's off about them. And then, they seem to know what's going on. And the person doesn't freak out when he's been taken away from his vacation at the speed of sound. But then he's like, oh, I'm not going to take a vacation. I'm like, you can't escape this place anyway. And I'm like, there's just little things that really work about episode 3.
Episode 3 in the second half especially just gets so good. I love, again, playing onto like those sitcom, tropes. You have Geraldine and Wanda talking, and like the entire scene, Wanda has just got to like keep Geraldine's attention so she doesn't notice the freaking swan, especially when it's biting her. Also, I think that like the swan biting her Geraldine's like leg or her pants, like I think that's like done practically, which like fits for like of course the 70s would do that, because they could have just done it with CGI, but no, they did it like practically. It's like fit with the 70s style. So it's already a very funny episode, but then you get to the ending portions, and and you have Herb and Agnes just like talking about Geraldine, and Herb says like, oh, she came here to to save us from, and yada yada, and then he gets cut off. And yeah, it's I want to know I want to know so bad, like who's the one who's really pulling the strings here? Like I'm pretty sure it's Wanda, but like I'm also pretty sure that there's something more than that. Like they're not just gonna make Wanda the main fucking villain, or are they? Who knows? Yeah,
it's very interesting, especially because this is the first mention of Pietro since Ultron. First mention
finally.
Of Ultron in friggin' forever.
Finally.
And it makes me wonder if they're going to bring Pietro back, and if it's possible to do so. Like, there are rumors of the other Quicksilver actor being utilized, and I don't know. Like, here's the thing: I liked the person who played Pietro. I liked it a lot, and I was sad to see him killed, especially because it didn't make sense with his healing factor. Because a speedster has healing, unless he's not really dead, and that's the whole. That's been my idea for the entire. After Ultron, I don't think Pietro's dead. Did we see a body? No.
I'm pretty... Well, no, we got a body. He was absolutely, like, wide-eyed and dead. That was absolutely... No, I'm pretty...
We did?
Sorry?
It's been a while since I've seen Ultron, so I don't know, but...
Yeah, we did. For context, guys, I... Throughout the entirety of, like, from, like, late December to early January, I did an entire MCU binge. Zen's gonna like try and like catch up with them like over time, but given both this series and also like all the stuff on her channel, that could probably take a while, which is fine. But yeah, in Age of Ultron, you know, he flops down. He's like, you didn't see that coming. Flops down and he's wide-eyed and dead. And then on the one of the mini heli carriers that's like taking the people down, we see Pietro's body next to like Hawkeye as he like lies down, and it's so we have a body, like he's absolutely dead, but we could see
unless somebody found the body and took the bullet out and then his healing kicked in.
But then also that could just not be a factor of MCU Pietro, because remember, it's like Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are supposed to be mutants, but that's something that hasn't been established from the beginning.
It's just something weird to me, and I know little bits here and there, but in the comics, Wanda had the reality powers that were very powerful, and they put that in here, whereas Quicksilver in the movies is just speed, but in the comics, he had a healing factor.
I feel like if they're not going to bring Pietro back here, then that's it. Like, we're not going to see him again. The only other place where I could see him coming back, because Wanda is a supporting character in it, possibly Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. If it's not here or there, I feel like that's it. We've kind of like run the course of like, is Quicksilver going to come back?
It's a shame because Quicksilver is a good character, and I get that they want to use his death to further Wanda's character, which is, you know, it's technically reverse fridging.
It's reverse fridging.
Like, it's not a fridging, because fridging is female characters to advance a male character. It's a reverse, so
I also think
bad, but...
I also think like what makes fridging bad, because it's not just female character dying for male character development, it's also female character dying for male character development, but also that female character dies with like no agency. She dies with no she dies without having a story of her own told. She dies, you know, like in like a rather, I don't want to say pathetic way, but like in a rather undignified way.
I can say that of Pietro, though. That's the thing. Like, Pietro kind of had a story to tell.
Yeah.
And he was killed off early before he could tell that story. And they told it a lot more with Wanda, but Pietro was the one who had more revenge going on. And I don't know, like, to me, I felt like there was more potential there. And I've always, like, I love Ultron. Age of Ultron is one of my favorite movies.
I love Age of Ultron too.
But the death of Pietro, I think, is the biggest misstep, and I wonder if they're going to try to correct that here.
I've always been like rather like fine with Pietro's death. Like, I agree that they could have like kept him going. Like, I feel like one of the main reasons why they did it was because they caved into all the people who were like, "Oh, the MCU never kills off characters," or I'm like, it's like it's not even the point of like they have killed off characters and like you guys, it's not even just the point of like, oh, they have killed off characters, don't be so dramatic. It's also the fact of like, you don't need to resort to death to like create stakes is my thing. But
exactly, especially like the Avengers, they didn't have to resort to it. Like, you don't need to kill off characters in order to have conflict. You just need to have emotional weight, and Ultron had that.
Yeah, but even saying that, like, I'm fine with Pietro dying because he did it of his own accord, and he did it in like a sacrificial way. It's just that if we take like all the aspects of Fridge, because okay, here's the thing, I'm fine with like and this is of course like a male character dying, but like going back to fridging, I'm fine with a female character dying for that development if it doesn't fall into what I consider like the 2 or 3 trappings that really make fridging bad. That being like that character didn't have a story of their, like that character had a story of their own to tell that now they just aren't able to tell because they're dead. The second one is like they died with no agency, and the third one's like they died without any dignity. In Pietro's case, again, male character, but in Pietro's case, he died with dignity, he died of his own accord, but he still had a story to tell is the thing, you know? Where you compare that to someone like...
I only partially agree because he has super speed. He could have stopped the bullet a different way. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Flash can pull a bullet out of the air.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, the scene could have been handled a little better. Yeah, whereas you compare it to someone like, say, Nat in Endgame, for example, where she died of her own accord, she died in a dignified way. She doing this, she basically saved the universe, you know, and at that point, you know, the fact that she should have gotten her own movie before Endgame aside, she had gone through an entire story throughout the MCU. Whereas here, this was Pietro's first fucking movie, so, you know, but...
and I don't agree with Nat's death either, but we're not here to talk about that.
Yeah. That's an entire discussion of its own. We'll save that for whenever we talk about Endgame in the future, because I feel like I'm in the minority that actually doesn't mind Nat's death, but again, discussion for a different time. We went on an entire tangent just about Pietro.
I just want to talk about one more thing before we wrap up, because there is something that I do want to touch upon.
Mm-hmm.
Mysterious pregnancy is a trope in sci-fi and comics, and it was done in Avengers 200 with Wanda, which is why
it wasn't. It was Miss Marvel.
With Miss Marvel, sorry. But it was done, and I was worried that this might be the thing here. But they actually managed to make the trope work, where they had agency. She clearly wants these kids. She's actively speeding up the process, but she still has the pains. She still has, like, all of the stuff that's going into the pregnancy, but she clearly wants these children, which is a part of her character.
Which I feel is going to end really badly for her by the end of this series.
But my thought with this is that it's setting up Inhumans, because, you know, they might have the kids be part of the Inhumans, and that's what AIM is doing.
I'm more thinking that they're gonna retcon Wanda into being a mutant, and that the kids are going to be mutants, because these are also the same kids from the comics. Essentially, Wanda did have, you know, twin boys in the comics who were a construct of her reality, but then they several years later, because comics, they got reincarnated into the real world, and now they are young superheroes in their own right, who I think are like Speed and Wiccan, I think are their names. I think their names are like Speed and Wiccan, and they are a part of the Young Avengers. And I've seen like the comic panels where they like reunite with Wanda, and Wanda's like, what kind of mother would I be if I didn't recognize my own kids? And, you know, so I definitely think that by the end of the series, her kids are going to get like erased from reality, because like I think this entire reality from Wanda is going to evaporate. But I do feel like they're going to do something similar in the MCU and set up Speed and Wiccan, again furthering the theories of Young Avengers being a thing.
I have a few theories, but I just want to say that this is the first time I've seen this handled properly and not be creepy, while at the same time having undertones to, is this what she wants? Is she being controlled? But from my perspective and from what they're setting up, she's in control, she wants these kids, and there's a creepy veneer of, what's behind this now?
yeah, it's. I didn't think about what you were saying about like because AIM's a big like a company that like goes after the Inhumans. At least if the Avengers 2020 game's anything to go by, it's so that could be a thing. Thing is, I think they're saving the Inhumans for Miss Marvel, because I think like Miss Marvel's gonna be the point where they're like, okay, we screwed the pooch the first time. No, everyone hated the original Inhuman series. Let's start again, retry. Because I feel like they're gonna keep, because they've already kept Agent Carter in canon. I have a strong feeling like they're gonna mostly keep Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in canon. And also, there's already been like all these rumors about them repurposing the Netflix cast as supporting characters in other people's series or movies. I feel like the only one that's going to be like a hard, we're rebooting this, we're retconning this, forget that original series ever happened, was Inhumans, because no one liked Inhumans, and Marvel has obviously considered it like a big misstep, and something that I think they're just going to like reboot.
It's hard to really say, one, because I haven't seen Inhumans, but also because we used to say that they retconned the Incredible Hulk, and looking back at rewatching that film, they kind of didn't, because a lot of the elements still pull through even in modern series. And you know, my friend likes to say, oh, that was retconned away. Not really, no.
No, it wasn't retconned. It was never retconned. It was never retconned is the thing. Like, Incredible Hulk was never retconned. And especially come Civil War, we had, like, you know, Thunderbolt Ross come in. Now we have Abomination coming back for the She-Hulk series. So Incredible Hulk was never retconned. But especially because, and particularly because it's also a movie, but because Inhumans was a television show, and it was supposed to be a movie, and Kevin Feige himself said, like, oh, we still have plans for an Inhumans movie. So what I think is going to happen is with Miss Marvel, we're gonna set up the Inhumans, and then I feel like maybe in like either the end of that series or in a second season for Miss Marvel, we're gonna get the recasts for Medusa and Black Bolt and all that stuff, and then we're going to lead that into a movie, and that'll be the proper Inhumans movie with, you know, Medusa, Black Bolt, etc., and because again, Inhumans should not have been turned into a television show, especially because they didn't have the budget for it, and I have no problem spoiling this because it's in like the first episode. They shave Medusa's head because it's like, oh, Medusa's head is it's her power. She uses her hair as her power. But because you gotta keep that as a constant thing, it's either you don't have Medusa be in the show very much, which she's an important character, so you gotta have her in the show, or you do what they did and shave her head. Thing is, for starters, that's a stupid fucking thing to do, and secondly, that's not how Medusa's hair works, because if you shave her hair, it will just grow back in like a day. Ugh, fuck that show, it's awful.
I haven't seen that, but, you know, I'm interested in seeing more of, like, the Daredevil people, and, you know, the Netflix shows were good, it just, people did like some of them. I've seen season 1 and 2 Daredevil. Season 2 was mixed, but it had good stuff. I loved season 1. I loved Jessica Jones. I heard good things about, well, I've heard bad things about Iron Fist, but
Iron Fist is bad.
The other one, Luke Cage, I heard mixed things about. So I don't know. This is the problem of releasing on Netflix. They don't have advertising well enough, you know?
Yeah.
And I never know when they're there.
Yeah, and in regards to Netflix cast, these are just rumors at this point. Actually, well, in the case of Daredevil, we have, like, there's been reports that Charlie Cox was on the set for Spider-Man 3 to, like, have a cameo as Matt Murdock. And
he should have been in Endgame, like they rumored.
Well, okay, well, they couldn't, because by that point, they couldn't because of Netflix and stuff. So, and especially after the Netflix shows were canceled, they had like a no touch kind of thing where it's like they had to wait till a certain date until they could use those characters again. So you can say he should have been in Endgame, but they literally couldn't have done that. So, but yeah, it's Matt Murdock seems like he's going to be in Spider-Man 3. And currently rumors have it that Jessica Jones and Luke Cage are going to be in She-Hulk, which makes sense because attorney series.
Which that would make sense. I will give him that.
Mm-hmm. And just to end up with episode 3 of WandaVision, I just love how they dropped the facade with Geraldine, and it's and like they toss her out. Of course, we all know that Geraldine is Monica Rambeau. That's something they long since confirmed since San Diego Comic-Con. Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do with Monica. Like, at this point, I love how they, like, cast Monica out, like, this early. So now we can focus on Monica, like, as herself, you know, really investigating, like, what the hell's happening here. And kind of taking a viewer role into seeing, like, you know, who's really the one pulling the strings. Is it Wanda? Or is it, like, everyone else? And coming back to what I was saying earlier, how, like, they're playing the sitcom aspect really straight. This is what I wanted to, like, touch in on. If this is Wanda's doing, which it's basically like shown that it pretty much is. If this is Wanda's doing, then this makes complete sense because sitcoms usually are like really happy and like a typical everyday life. Because that's the big thing about sitcoms, no matter what decade it is, it's reflective of those time periods and like the typical happy-go-lucky life. And it would make sense that Wanda would want to like base it entirely around that, and like why would be like such a straight, like why would play the genre so straight, because it's Wanda picturing an ideal life for herself, which is a nice little detail that I love about this series so far.
Speaking of which, you know, when things don't go well with the 70s, like she immediately goes widescreen and turns a widescreen. And then she's like, you know what, let's try a different reality. It's like, it's so interesting, and I'm here for this. This is a good show, and
it is.
I don't know all the answers, but I haven't laughed this hard at a TV show in a long time, and I just enjoy it. I think episode 1 might be the weakest. Not that it's bad, but because that sitcom format doesn't do it for me as much. But it was still enjoyable, and then we get to episode 2, and that's where I started loving it. In episode 3, I'm like, okay, what's going on? All these theories. I think the big moment for me in episode 1 was the choking scene, but, you know, the rest of the series so far is really damn good.
Yeah, and I think we basically touched on like all the theories so far. It's like, you know, could this be AIM? Oh, another thing for AIM. In episode 1 and 2, with the old sitcom credits come up, and they zoom back on like Wanda and Vision, it's a hexagon, and who has a hexagon in their logo? AIM does. So I think at this point, AIM, it's not 100%. That could be a massive red herring. I feel like there's a lot of red herrings here, but it's like, AIM could be like one thing that the show's going for.
And it's not just episode 2 and 1. It's episode 3 starts with the opening. It has the AIM logo.
Yeah. You're right. Like all the hexagons in the opening. And you know, there's of course the theories that you brought up regarding the kids. I think the only theory we haven't really touched on is like a lot of people are thinking Mephisto. I don't see it personally. Not because it's like, okay, only reason I don't see it is because if they were going to do Mephisto, I feel like they would make a much bigger deal about that in like before releasing the series. And it's like, and even then I feel like Mephisto, they would want to do it in like a movie or at least like a bigger Disney Plus show, like say Secret Invasion or whatever. Mephisto wouldn't fit in Secret Invasion, but like one of the much bigger ones. And I feel like if they were going to do Mephisto, they'd want to do it in like a situation like that. I get how Mephisto connects to Wanda in this case, especially in regards to the comics where she made a deal with Mephisto for her kids to be real, or to like conjure up her kids.
Well, that could be part of the multiverse of madness where like after she loses the kids.
Also, multiverse of madness it could be an acronym for Mom, and Wanda's in the movie. Oh my god, I just figured it out. Oh.
Wanda is the master of masters. It all makes sense.
Yeah, I'm loving this series so far. It's I've got all these like ideas in my head. My current thought is that Wanda is 100% in control. Well, not 100% in control, but she's the one who conjured up this reality. But someone is I have a feeling like someone is kind of pulling the strings to make sure that this reality stays the same for their own gain. Like, it could be Agnes. Agnes herself is very suspicious, and she's also the an adaptation of like a character from the comics, so I think is like Wanda's mentor. I'm forget her name's like going like it's slipping off my mind, but yeah, I think it could very well be Agnes. She's like one of the top theories right now. Yeah, I'm loving this show. I can't wait. And look, this episode right here has gone on like over an hour. All consecutive episodes of this are gonna like go shorter and shorter, primarily because for this video we really had to like introduce phasing forward and then also talk about like the lead up to WandaVision, and then we had 3 episodes of the show to talk about. We do have a series overview coming out after the series ends. Essentially, there's a 2-week gap in between the end of WandaVision and the start of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. In that gap, we're gonna do in that 1-week gap, we're gonna do a series overview with for the entire series. And also, don't be surprised if we bring on the occasional guest for this series, but you'll just have to stay tuned for that. But yeah, expect the individual episodes, like episode 4, 5, 6. The series is going to go for 9 episodes. Expect the individual episodes to go for a much shorter time, like around half an hour-ish, I want to say. But yeah, that's my thoughts right there. Loving the show right now. Each episode just tops the other so far. Gonna have to see if that continues on with episode 4, 5, and onward. But yeah, just not going to give it a rating so far. I'll give it a rating once we do our series overview. But yeah, final thoughts then?
I'm intrigued. I didn't know what to think at first, and while I liked the first episode, I didn't know where it was going until that end point. But episode 2 and 3 are fantastic, and I think it did a great job of kind of hiding its cards, if you will. And I'm ready for more.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and one final point before I forget it. I didn't see this myself. I'm gonna have to go back and see it. But the 70s had the 70s episode had like the painting backgrounds, because just to fit the time, like they had like painted backgrounds, which I thought was a nice detail. Apparently, in like one of those paintings, you see a castle that looks similar to Strucker's castle. Which that's like if that's there, then like that's likely just a thing of like Wanda's psyche, and probably doesn't like. Because I'm gonna be honest, I don't see Hydra being a big aspect of this. I think like they're only touching upon Hydra to like talk about Wanda's memories, not because like, oh, Hydra's gonna be a big like villain of this series. Because at this point, I feel like Hydra's dead essentially. I feel like at this point we're just like all in on Sword. I feel like just Sword's gonna be the big focus, and like Wanda, now that she's realized that Sword's like a threat to this reality of hers, she's trying to keep Sword out as much as possible.
We will see. We'll see. I mean, it could be that the Red Skull comes back. You never know. While Hugo Weaving does not want to be part of the role, the character's still there, so.
Well, at this point, I feel like Red Skull's just an entirely different beast in of himself since we introduced the Soul Stone. So, I don't really think so, but, anything could happen at this point, honestly.
Anything is possible. But, with that being said, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess.
And I am Philip Kanzurovsky. Saying my full name like that is rather awkward, but, yeah, so look forward to more Phasing Forward. We're going to be doing this for all of Phase 4, all the Disney Plus shows, all the movies when they come out. Yeah, I'm really happy to be starting this series, and don't worry, all the other episodes are not going to be this long, with the exception of the movie discussions, which will likely go for around an hour and a half to 2 hours, and the like the series overviews, which will probably be like the same length as this one, not any longer. I see the series.
And if you're interested in MCU pre-Phase 4, well, we have something in the works in the future.
In the future, yes, we definitely have something in the works for the future on Zen's channel. On this channel, I do have a Infinity Saga ranking in the works. That'll come anytime between February to April. I want to release that before Black Widow because I want to do an entire ranking of all of the movies. And whereas in the future, I will include the Disney Plus in those like rankings, like if I ever do an updated list. For the time being, I'm just going to do the movies since WandaVision's already started and such. So I'm just going to make a video ranking the Infinity Saga. But yeah, that's, that's pretty much it. So come back next week, either on Tuesday or whatever. In terms of American times and non-Australian times, we plan to release these on on Mondays or Tuesdays. Or actually, anytime between Sunday to Tuesday. Anytime between Sunday to Tuesday, we plan to release these. Australian time, it's Monday to Wednesday. So, yeah, there's that. But yeah, come back next week when we do episode 4. And it'll be much shorter than this. So, yeah. I'm Philip. That is Zen. We will catch you guys next week for episode 4 of WandaVision. Take care, everyone.